So, I had finally talked to Robert Spaulding on Saturday. It wasn't exactly easy getting him to talk, but eventually we managed to persuade him. He let us in and spoke as he led us to his living room. My wife is out with the dog right now, so we won't be disturbed for a while. I don't know what you're hoping to find out, though. The police must have searched the house after that girl disappeared. Hell, they even visited me and asked me if I was in there recently. I inherited that place. After Matthew, he didn't finish the sentence. Instead, motioned for us to sit down and sat opposite to us. Shoot then. I had so many questions, I didn't even know where to start. But thankfully, Sandra asked the first question. You said you inherited that house. Were you ever inside after your brother disappeared? He shook his head. Only once, right after it happened. My wife and I went there to go through Matthew's things. I just couldn't stay there. I hated that place. Everything in there reminded me of him. I tried to sell it, but I couldn't find anyone who wanted to buy it. People don't like places where something bad happened. And what about his housemate, Christopher Dolliard? Did anyone come for his things? Robert nodded. His cousin or something. She contacted me and went there with me and my wife when we arrived to pick up Matthew's things. She took Christopher's stuff, drove off, and I never saw her again. Do you have her contact? I asked. No, sorry. I don't even remember her name. Also, her last name wasn't Dolliard. I'm sure about that. Damn it, I muttered. And what do you know about Christopher Dolliard? He grimaced. I never liked him. He was an acquaintance of my aunt, Marcia, who owned that house before Matthew and... Acquaintance? I interrupted him. How did they know each other? She said they were colleagues. She retired a year before she died, but before that, she was a university professor, taught something about religion. I never quite understood what exactly it was, and never really cared. We weren't particularly close. She was intelligent, but totally crazy. Crazy? In what sense? He shrugged. I don't know, just... She had really strange beliefs. Sometimes she went into this litany about occult and rituals and other dimensions, and it looked like she believed in all of that. He snorted. A whole load of bull crap, if you asked me. Matthew was interested in it, though. Sandra and I exchanged glances. Could this mean something? And this Christopher, and your brother, how exactly did they meet? Oh, that was on my aunt's birthday celebration. She invited so many people, you'd almost think a royal wedding was going on. And well, she just comes up to Matthew with Dolliard in tow and says, Oh, Matthew, do you know my colleague Christopher? You two will get on splendidly. And that was it. They just instantly clicked. 5 minutes and they were best friends forever. You mentioned you didn't like him, Sandra said. Why? Robert laughed. I know it sounds weird, but it was kind of like an instant antipathy. You know when you just look at somebody and you know you aren't going to like them. Well, that was me and Dolliard. You see, he had charisma and strong personality. It was like some kind of magnetism. He was funny and polite, and a lot of people liked him. But it never quite worked on me. He had kind of strange eyes. I don't even know how to describe it, but it always felt like there was something else behind all his charms. That underneath it, he was a different person. Matthew always said I just judged him based on my first impression. Robert stood up. Wait a moment. I think I have a photo of him somewhere. He opened one of the cupboards, took out a photo album, and began turning pages. "Aha! Here it is," he exclaimed after a few seconds, pulled out a photo, and showed it to us. This was taken on that celebration, 2 years before Aunt Marcia died. The photo showed 2 people. They were smiling and turning to the camera. Robert pointed at the left one. "This is my brother." Even though the photo was nearly 2 decades old, Matthew's similarity to his twin brother was obvious. His hair was the same brown color. His face had the same round shape. I didn't dwell on it too much, though, because I was more interested in the second man. Robert pointed at him and said, "This is Dolliard." I looked at the picture more closely. Dolliard was casually dressed and smiling friendly, and I could see what Robert meant when he said he had charisma. He was tall, with black, neatly cut hair and dark, piercing eyes. "Wow, he's gorgeous," Sandra blurted out. I looked at her and she blushed and facepalmed. "Sorry." "He does look good, though," Clara smirked. "Just look at those eyes." I glared at her. "That's exactly what I'm talking about," Robert said. Everybody looked at him and just instantly liked him or thought he was attractive or whatever. "Do you know anything about him?" I asked. "Something about his life, family, whatever." Robert shook his head. "Sorry. Like I said, I didn't like him that much. I'm not even sure he did work with Aunt Marcia. Whatever the truth was, I'm positive he didn't work for that university anymore when he moved in with Matthew." "But you said your brother and him were friends. Surely he must have talked about him sometimes?" Sandra frowned. "Oh, yeah. Matthew wouldn't shut up about him ever since they met. Christopher this and Christopher that. Eventually, I started zoning out every time he talked about him. Now, I regret it a bit, but at that time, it was just annoying." Sandra leaned forward. "What is your opinion about your brother's disappearance? What do you think happened that night?" Robert sighed. "I have no idea. Last time I talked to Matthew was 3 months before all that happened. We kind of drifted apart since he started being best friends with Dolliard. I don't know what he or Dolliard were doing." He looked a bit uncertain. "Listen, this is going to sound weird, but you know what they say about twins, right? That they have some kind of bond and they can somehow feel what's going on with the other one?" We all nodded. Robert was silent for a few seconds, then he continued. "I'm not sure if I believe it, but ever since Matthew and I were kids, I always had kind of a gut feeling. Like, one time I just knew that something bad happened, and later that day, I found out that Matthew had been in a car accident. That kind of thing. And I have this gut feeling even now. I have no idea what happened to Matthew, or where he might be, but I know he's alive. I just feel it." We had a few more questions, but nothing came of it. We got the name of the university Robert's aunt worked at. He resolutely refused to allow us to look at things that belonged to Matthew. I wasn't sure if anything he told us would be useful. On our way back, Clara looked at us and said, "I know you both think this house has something to do with Leah's disappearance, but don't you think you're a bit paranoid?" "What do you mean?" Sandra asked before I could say anything. Clara sighed. "Look, I'm not denying that there were some strange things about it all, but Leah seems completely normal, at least to me. You two seem to think she's behaving a bit strangely, but that could be explained by some kind of trauma. And as much as you seem to want to get to the bottom of this, what if it doesn't have anything to do with that house? It just seems to me that we didn't find out anything relevant. Maybe you just, I don't know, convinced yourselves there's something shady going on, and now you're so paranoid you're exaggerating everything. Sandra immediately started arguing with her, but I had to think about it all for a second. Was it possible? Could it really be that I was reading too much into completely innocent situations? After all, Leah hasn't really done anything dangerous. Did we really imagine it all? I spent the rest of Saturday thinking and observing Leah. Yeah, she didn't do anything dangerous or malicious. There still was that smile of hers, though. That one where she narrowed her eyes while quirking her lips. I never saw that expression on her face before she disappeared. Maybe I was really just paranoid, but it seemed to me that I've been seeing it more often now. And every time I saw it, it made me feel uneasy. On Sunday, Clara visited me and decided to stay the night. I have the afternoon shift this Monday, and so does she, so we could spend the whole morning together. Late in the night, when we were both laying in bed, she suddenly turned to me and said, "Okay, I take back what I said yesterday." What? The stuff I said about you being just paranoid? Maybe there is something to it. I sat up. Clara, did something happen? Did Leah? She shook her head. I don't know. I went to use the bathroom, and when I came out, she was there, in the corridor, and she was staring at me, really intensely. I asked her if she needed something, and she asked, "Do you love Jim?" I was confused, but I said, "Yeah, of course, I love Jim." And she said, "Would you do anything for him?" So I was a bit creeped out, but I nodded. And then she just smiled at me and said, "We'll see." And before I could react, she went past me to the bathroom. I didn't know what to say. Jesus, what was that about? Clara shook her head. I don't know, but I think you are right. There is something going on. She really scared me. The way she was staring at me. She shuddered. I reached for her hand. Clara, I'm sorry. I never meant for you to get involved in this. It's not your fault, love. But we need to find out what's going on. Soon. Clara eventually managed to fall asleep, but I was awake the whole night. I couldn't sleep if I tried. Now I knew I needed to find out what was going on with Leah. In the morning, I was exhausted and my head was pounding. My sister got up later than usual when I was getting ready to leave for work. She came into the kitchen and smiled at me. "What the hell did you say to Clara yesterday?" I barked at her. She looked surprised. "Nothing." "Don't lie to me. Why did you ask her all of those things? Do you want to know who Christopher is?" She interrupted me before I could continue. I froze and stared at her. "What? You wanted to know who Christopher is. Do you still want to know?" I was taken aback. Yeah, of course I want to know." She smiled. Her eyes narrowed just a bit. "Wait until tomorrow, Jim." "What?" "I told you. Wait until tomorrow, then you'll know." She turned around and started to walk away from the kitchen. I grabbed her arm. "What do you mean? Why should I wait for tomorrow? Why can't you tell me now?" I almost shouted at her, but she just raised her eyebrows and pointed at the clock. "You'll be late for work?" I'm writing this at work. I phoned Clara and Sandra and told them what just happened. I'm not sure leaving without getting Leah talking was the best course of action. If I didn't need to go to work, I'd have stayed and gotten the answers out of her. I can only hope I'll be able to find something out once I'm back from work. Anyway, I'm looking towards tomorrow with dread. I have no doubt that I will get my answers then. But what is going to happen? Thank you, Spooks and Spookettes, for joining me for this reading. I really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, I would really appreciate a like on this video. If you think you have a story for me to read, I will leave links below where you can send it. I also look forward to reading any comments left down below. If you'd like to join me for more, there's always a subscribe and notification buttons that would really make my day. If you're not ready to subscribe just yet, I hope you will check out my other videos. Thanks again, and wishing you a sweet night.